On March the 7th to the 29th, Volcano Theatre in Swansea is performing Swansea Boy, a play written and directed by Swansea's own Sean Mathias, who is Wyn Thomas's first guest today. Sean, thanks for your company today.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here.
You chose Swansea for the premiere of this play. Why was that?
Well, I think, two reasons, really. One was I came back to Swansea in 2019 to do my play A Prayer for Wings, which is also set in Swansea, and I hadn't been directed by me in Swansea. But Swansea Boy, I wrote a number of years ago, but it had only been workshopped at the National Theatre and never fully produced. And the experience of Prayer for Wings was so positive, and doing it at Volcano was so great. I wanted to debut, really, Swansea Boy here. And also because it's it's not autobiographical, but it is very, very personal. You could probably say it's semi-autobiographical. And it's about a boy from Swansea who dreams of going to another world and dreams of being an artist. And so the whole of the first act is set in Swansea, and most of the characters are from Swansea. So it seemed most important, really, to start it here, to make this its birthplace.
I see. Okay, right up. So a little bit autobiographical, and the boy from Swansea went on to direct in the West End theatres.
That's it, yeah. I suppose that's what's strange about the play. I wrote it, actually, back in 1990, and then a few years ago, when I thought I would do it here, I sort of sat down and did a lot of revisions on it. But of course, I'm seeing it through the lens of a much older person with a whole life experience. And when I wrote it, I was still the boy who was. I didn't write it when I was 16. I wrote it when I was sort of more in my early 30s. But I was reflecting on the earlier part of my life, the part of your life, the rites of passage part, when you kind of leave home, leave education, go to the big city, start working, hope to work, have all these dreams, and life doesn't turn out to be quite as simple as you might have envisaged it in your bedroom in Swansea where you were cosseted.
So is it different working in Swansea than to the West End or Broadway, as you've done?
I always think that I just bring my own process and my own values to the work I'm doing, and that every piece I do, for me, whether it's on a big stage or a small stage, whether I'm being paid a lot of money or very, very little money, I try to sort of just do the work, and I put in the same amount of time and effort and passion, I would like to think and hope, that for anything. So it's not that different for me wherever I go. I'm used to, as a director who I've worked all over the world, I'm used to sort of moving around and everything. And actually, this is quite comforting because this time I'm actually living in the Mumbles and working in town. It's lovely. I drive in every morning. I'm absolutely loving it. It's so nice to be at home and working from my hometown. So it's great.
So scenes from the Gower.
Stage 2 is London in the East End. I went my first flat that I ever owned. I lived in a load of flats, but by the time I was in my 30s, I was lucky enough to buy a flat, put a deposit down on a flat, and that was in the East End. And back in the mid-80s, the East End was a pretty rough diamond still. It hadn't been developed. Now, of course, it's supremely fashionable, and all young people want to live in the East End. But right back then, it was a bit like living on the front line, and most of my friends, you're absolutely mad, I'm not coming over there to see you. It was quite rough, and it was fantastic, full of character. And oddly enough, one of the reasons that drew me most to it was it reminded me of home, because the East End was very, very friendly. West London seemed to be more snotty, and you didn't necessarily know your neighbours, and people weren't as kind or considerate. But the East End, people seemed very, very friendly. I still live in the East End when I'm in London, and it's still as friendly as it ever was. It's wonderful. So yes, that's the second half. That's if you like. There's the first act is awakening, when he's awakening as a young man and thinking, what is there for me in life? And he wants to be an artist. The second act in London is reality. It's very nitty gritty, very raw. It's the realization of what it is to be an adult and to go to work. As anyone who's has left education and gone into a career knows that there are many pitfalls in working, and it's not all you might dream it is when you're an ideological student, as it were. And then the third act is in Morocco, and that is the consequence of all the things that are going on, because the play is very much dealing with the AIDS epidemic as it broke, onto the world in the mid to late 80s and into the 90s. And the sort of terrifying epidemic and the pandemic and a number of people that got killed. I was living in London at the time, and the number of people that died from AIDS, the one people I knew, some of them very close to me, was daunting and terrifying. It was a devastation. And the only other thing I know in my lifetime in recent years was the COVID pandemic. But of course, they were very different in nature. But the drama that it brought about to society was the only other thing I can compare it to, because AIDS swept through, first of all, the gay community, but then obviously it was called a gay plague at first, and there was so much bigotry and stigmatism. But then we started to realize that HIV could affect absolutely everyone. And then, of course, we started seeing it affecting people all around the world. So it became this terrible global pandemic. So the play deals with that. And the two main characters go off to live in Morocco, and they create this kind of spiritual haven there, where they live outside of the real world, as it were.
Yeah. So I say, again, kind of autobiographical of yourself, because obviously you lived through those bad days of the AIDS crisis. Yeah, indeed, yeah. There's a variety of experience in the cast, isn't there? Tell us about that.
Well, we've got a wonderful cast. The three young players are all graduates from the Royal Welsh. The two boys who play the two lead boys were in the same year at the Royal Welsh. So they work together a lot, and they're friends. So the chemistry between them is just fantastic. So that's really exciting. And then we've got several Swansea actors. We've got Linos and Stefan and Alison Learman. And it's a very Welsh enterprise. It's a great company. And what's wonderful is, in any company, it's very hard. You come together to make a play, and it's sort of ad hoc. We're all gypsies, and we live in all sorts of different places, work in all sorts of different places. But it really relies on a kind of real bonding and a camaraderie and a kind of, obviously a respect of each other. But it's not easy making a play and making theatre. It's a wonderful and a beautiful thing, but it does rely on everyone connecting. There's a chemistry, an alchemy, even more than chemistry, that has to be part of it. And this company is just wonderful. I'm loving working with them, and everyone is all hands on deck, and everyone is very committed. So I hope the public will share our enthusiasm, but we're having a really good time. It's very creative, and we're enjoying working with each other and encouraging each other.
And tell me, who's producing it? Who's producing the play?
Mark Kanan is producing the play.
Have you worked with him before?
And I've not worked with Mark before. No, I've not worked with him. He's new in my life, and he just fell in love with the play, and it was his idea to do it in Promenade. So we actually, because the play spans a decade, the time period of the setting of the play is 10 years or so, and it spans 3 countries, Wales and England with London, and there's actually one scene in Greece as well, but that's a sort of sidestep, and then the third act in Morocco. He had the idea of each act being in a different space in the volcano. So you go into a totally different space and a totally different vibe and a totally different atmosphere in each space in the volcano. Yeah. So there's an interval between the 2 acts where the audience moves from one space to the other, or hopefully goes via the bar and has some strong liquor and gets to the next space. And so actually the audience is participating in slightly more than they would usually, because each space, the arrangement of where the audience sits is entirely different. So the audience's relationship to the acting area and to the actors changes in dynamic in each space. So it's to make the sense that they are going on the journey with the Swansea boy, Colin, and they are kind of like family and friends, going along with him in his life and trying to understand his experiences and trying to understand who he is, which is what the other characters in the play do. So I think it has a beautiful synchronicity between actor and audience in a slightly different way.
So you're a man of different...
Thanks to Mark and his...
Yeah. You're a man of different experiences.
No, just to say his
yeah, go on, carry on. Yeah.
Yes, it is. No, it is. It will be a lot of different experiences within one evening. It's kind of like an event. I mean, I think is what it really is. It's a it's something, and there's only 50 places because each location is different. There's not we can't fit 100 or 200 people in. There's only 50 people, so it will feel incredibly personal to each audience. That the audience's contribution will be really, very enormous, very potent, and it is immersive in that sense, in that the audience's sense of being part of the whole thing is very thorough.
So, considering your worldwide experience, then, is this something new to have audiences in different locations for the play?
Yeah, I've never done that. I mean, a lot of people have done that. They call it promenade theatre or immersive theatre or site-specific theatre. I've attended many shows like that. Some of them were a little bit hopeless, and some of them were quite wonderful. It's exciting. It's more daring. It's a more daring, challenging thing to do. And when the practitioners have pulled it off, I found it's been thrilling. I've never done it, and I think the reason I agreed to do it was because I think it's very apt for this play, because the play takes you through these different countries and these different time spans. And the other characters in the play are trying to understand who the Swansea boy is. They can't quite understand him when he's in Swansea. Then they struggle even more to understand him when he's in London. And then by the time they get to Morocco, they're like, wow, who is this Swansea boy? But wonderfully, Swansea follows Colin through the whole play. So when he leaves Swansea, we don't leave Swansea behind. The other characters come to find him throughout his life. Settled off in the world.
Well, it's nice to speak to you again. The last time we spoke was in 2009 when you were directing Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh, right. Yes. That was wonderful. That was great. Yes. We did it at the Theatre Royal Haymarket when I was the artistic director.
Yeah.
And then I went on to do it on Broadway. Yeah, it was lovely. It was a wonderful job, that, because it's such a great story and such a beloved story. Such a great book. Excuse me.
Well, it's nice to catch up with you again.
Lovely.
That's my guest, my first guest today. That's Sean Mathias. And on March the 7th to 29th, Volcano Theatre in Swansea's performing Swansea Boy. And you can get tickets from swansea.boy.wales. That's wonderful.
That's it.
Sean,
please come.
Thanks for your company today. Thank you.